Welcome to the Unforgetting podcast. My name is Aleena.
My name is Victoria.
My name is Edgar.
My name is Nathan, and we are part of Valenzuela's class of 2024.
What do you guys think about the book?
So for me personally, I thought I had a slow start, and I really had to get dived into the book and really understand the story of Unforgetting and what Roberto Lovato meant by unlocking his past trauma, his childhood, and his current state of mind, and really understanding his family's past and his country's past, both America and El Salvador, which is something I can connect to. What about you, Aleena?
I think for me personally, I disagree because especially in the beginning, like in the prologue, there was many events that were important and surprising, and I just didn't think that they were super boring, like Nathan said. And what do you think, Edgar?
I personally agree with you because the book had such meaningful words like machete in the beginning, where it stands for dividing families and many deaths. What do you think, Victoria?
Personally, I kind of am a mix of both because I found it a bit interesting at the beginning, but towards the middle, I was getting a little bit lost and I just lost interest. But towards the end, as I was seeing Roberto tie his family background together, I began to understand and relate to it as a Salvadoreña, and I appreciated his work.
Okay, so with that, what role do you guys think sacrifice plays in this book titled Unforgetting?
I think sacrifice plays a big role in Unforgetting because, like Roberto, he had to sacrifice his love for G and leave her in the United States as he went back to El Salvador.
And yeah, that's really true because in the book, Lovato explains how he really cared for this girl, G, and it was like his first love, like in a way, meaning like he would do anything for her. And, you know, G had such an impact on Lovato because he couldn't decide to go if he should stay at the U.S. or go back to El Salvador to fix all the situations with the war and the gangs and all that.
And I think it also ties back to Ramon and how he decided to leave El Salvador and his family to go to Mexico, because even though he loved his mom and his family and he probably wanted to stay with them, he had to see what was best for his future, and he made the sacrifice to leave them so that he could have a better future for himself and for his family.
This theme also connects to a theory that I have been studying for the past few months, which is a psychosocial theory, which basically just explains that past events that occurred that have an effect on future events.
That caused Lovato from his very youth self, family trauma, to his older version, like joining gangs and doing activities such as stealing cars. The psychosocial theory involves in this because he has seen many things from his dad, his grandpa, and he just can't get it out of his head.
Yeah, so for example, when he was younger and he would get beat by his dad, that kind of led him to have this built up anger that he wanted to just kind of what is it? I don't know how to say it,
Release?
Yeah, he wanted to release this built up anger that he had because his dad beat him so much. So then, like Edgar said, he joined a gang, but then after he joined the gang, he also had this realization hey, what am I doing with my life?
When he grew older.
Yeah.
And also when he found a box of condoms on his dad's little secret spot, that impacted he got really mad and pressed them. Just how do you feel about that with your mom? It's just a really big situation that really impacts your youth.
Yeah, so talking about youth and the whole psychosocial theory, it really connects to the constructivism theory, which revolves around education. And with both Ramon and Roberto being uneducated and wanting to go to schools, they were similar in those ways because they were similar in their youth. They had the same kind of trauma, and that is the main theme of this book, because neither one of them grew up with a good father, and they both learned the truth when it was already too late. And Victoria, how does your theory connect to ours and the story overall?
So my theory is planned behavior, and the way that this theory classifies an individual's behavior says that it's influenced by three factors, which are attitudes, subjective norms, and perceived behavior control, which is essentially how a person's environment, especially growing up, affects their decisions in their adult life. So for the way I can connect to the question, it talks about how the culture of silence in Salvadoran culture, especially for a relationship between Ramon And Roberto, which in this like case of the relationship, they don't have open communication, or they don't talk, or they don't share the feelings or experiences that they've grown up with. They just expect, like fathers in this culture just expect their sons to grow on their own and figure out society. And there's also a cycle of leaving or sacrifice for one's personal gain. For example, like when Ramon left his family so he could find a better opportunity for himself, or when Roberto left G because he felt like that's what he needed to do for himself. It's not necessarily a culture of selfishness, but it's can also be like, it could be seen as disloyalty, or just this idea that's pushed within them, this like society, to just have their own personal gain or to their own personal experiences because they don't have it from the people above them. And there's also like this idea that you need to have your own experiences to learn, when in reality, if they had this open communication, there could be different forms of growth. But what do you guys think about connecting our theories to the idea of why Roberto joined the gang?
I think for why Roberto joined a gang, like connecting it to the psychosocial theory is because, like, or in my opinion, I think because when he was little and he got beat by Pop, it caused him to have that built-up anger, like I mentioned earlier. So then he wanted to kind of take it out on like somebody or even something in general. And I think him joining the gang kind of like helped him take out that anger that he had. But then I think eventually afterwards he kind of realized, like, what am I doing? Like, this is not what I should be doing, you know? But what do you guys think?
So for me personally, I think that my theory connects to his desire to join a gang or even start his own gang known as the Originales, and in English meaning the originals. And basically he was an educated child because he did go to school, he understood things, he knew how to do math, so he knew what he was doing and he thought that was good for him. So he decided to go and do that to let out his anger from his dad, from his family. And also his father had done that as a kid. So it's just a passing from one generation to the next. And it's a thing that has been going on till today because gang violence still stands in the country all over around.
Connecting to what Nathan said, I think he was on the path to breaking the cycle or the culture of gangs, but then there's that like lying feeling of rebellion that he felt he needed to join or to be part of. Maybe it was so he could connect more to his culture, but he almost broke the cycle, and in the end he ended up doing that by like reaching a different point. But he risked that because just because he was trying to get back at his parents, or because he had like built up anger.
Also, I think because he also joined the gang, like you said, like he wanted to kind of like go away from that like line or like that path of like being in gangs and stuff. But I think because like that's all his dad knew, like his dad would like kind of grew up with violence around, he kind of like thought, oh, I have to do the same thing. And then because he like had that, it kind of resulted him to like do that, you know?
Yeah.
And before we get to our next question, here's a quick word from our sponsor, Epic Games Fortnite. Queue into Fortnite on December 7th at 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to play the new LEGO Fortnite mode, where we make childhood memories come back to life. Thank you, Fortnite, for sponsoring this podcast.
And talking about relationships, why do you believe Lovato didn't want a relationship, and why did it take him so long? Do you believe he doesn't know how to love someone right? Does his past have an influence? Like, for example, G? What do you think, Nathan?
For me personally, I think that it really does have an influence because the fact that he didn't know what love was between his father and his mother, because even now he lost his mother, and you could see that absence of his mother throughout the book. He doesn't really mention her as much as he does with his father or his grandmother, and that's one thing that really like kind of triggered me because I grew up with both parents, and there's kids like this or men like this who had to grow up without a mother figure, and I could see the lack of love in his life, that he didn't know how to love someone else, that his absence of anybody else in his life was the reason why he couldn't commit to G.
I agree with Nathan said because I feel like many people have different stories. Like Lovato, he had his situation with his father and his mom, and like he didn't really seem like to watch love out throughout his life. And so I'm guessing, like, no, I'm not guessing, I'm saying like Lovato didn't understand how to explain and show how to love like G, but he did know what love is because he missed her while he was away. And yeah, what do you guys think?
I agree with basically with what Nathan was saying. Like, he never had that example or that role model to follow when it comes to love. And like, he didn't mention his mom a lot, like Nathan said, but when he did, he had like high respect for her, just because he had a loss of respect for his dad, because he saw him like he was like having sex with a bunch of girls and constantly cheating on him. Yeah, so he was scared that he didn't have, most likely he was scared he wasn't capable of loving someone else, because he, like he said too, he didn't feel capable of being loved.
Yeah, and like that was because all he saw was his dad, and his dad was the only role model because his mom passed away when he was a young age. His only role model was his dad, and because he saw his dad like doing all those, like, I guess, quote unquote, like bad things, and just being like unloyal, it just kind of made him think like, oh, these are the footsteps that I have to follow. So that's kind of like why I think he didn't really have a good relationship, you know.
And then for me personally, I think that him leaving G and going to El Salvador early on was the reason why he really discovered his story of Unforgetting, why he was able to break through to his dad. But there's this instance where I constantly believe that, what if Roberto and G's relationship would have changed if she had moved to El Salvador from the beginning? Like, if they didn't break up and she went with him to work with Grispedez, which was an organization and helping the gang violence and all the after effects and helping the country get all of its resources and everything. So how do all of you believe that would change if she decided to go with them instead of staying?
I feel like if G went with Lovato, it would have. I feel like if G went with Lovato, he would have felt more motivated and felt the more of like what he needs to do and get done right. Although he was focused doing his job and focusing on gang, military, and El Salvador government, he felt the sense of missing someone and just some help and like someone to talk to. What do you guys think?
I agree with Edgar, just because I feel like if G would have went with him originally, I feel like the circumstances would have been different. Like, main focus would have been protecting G or protecting like them together, a family, or maybe they would have started like a family earlier, would have changed like the route of the relationship.
And I also think I agree with Victoria. I think his main focus, if G would have gone to El Salvador in the beginning, that he would just stay like protecting her and stuff, because he did in the book it mentioned that G went to go visit Roberto Lovato in El Salvador, and although he was really excited to see her, he was scared because he was just worried that something bad was going to happen because she wasn't supposed to be there, and she came there with like a different identity and like was unable to like be her true self. So I think if she would have gone from the beginning, he would have just stayed like protecting her, and that she would have been his main priority rather than like something else, you know.
Yeah, because the way that G and Roberto both developed on their own, I don't think they would have ended up being the same people by the end of the book, because either ways at the end of the book they still split up because they got together but they ended up not being together in the end. So this story just teaches us that there's not always a happy ending in every story, and that this was a true story, and this was his journey. This wasn't their journey, it was his, and that was the whole point of this book.
And like how Aleena was saying, how back to what Aleena was saying, when G went to visit Lovato, they went on a date, and when they finished their date, they were worried of getting caught like from the military because of G, and they were trying to run away from the military through a taxi.
Okay, so from this, what do you guys think? Like, in what ways can we personally relate to the theme of unforgetting? So, like, by families or like society, how do you guys think that like you can relate to unforgetting?
Okay, so for personally for me, like, this book allowed me to talk to my family, like, because I'm Salvadoreña too, so having this book, I was able to talk to my grandparents about, like, ask them questions about their history, or because my dad was born during the Civil War and he left El Salvador because of it, so I got to ask him like his experience of it. I got to ask my grandparents, and we got to have like conversations about it that I never had before, so that opened that door.
Yeah, opening doors was like a big thing for me because me as a Salvadorian as well, I was able to talk to my grandfather and my grandmother, also my cousins and my family in general, because my dad, he had left the Civil War back in the 90s, and he had grown up during the war, during the 80s, just viewing all the destruction in the country, seeing all the massacres and everything. But as a young child, he couldn't really comprehend what was going on. He didn't understand anything because the government was just always lying to them. And my grandfather, he understood everything, and he came to this country for a better opportunity, a better life. And he couldn't bring his sons with him or his family in general because it was just really dangerous to come in and out of the country, especially with that whole migrant crisis. And that's another issue in this book. And this is just an issue that both El Salvador and the United States needs to solve. But there's just always going to be this upstanding corruption that I now see from this book and that I will never seem to forget.
And then also from like an outsider's perspective, because I'm not Salvadoreña, I'm like from a Mexican perspective, a Mexican American, I think that this kind of relates, like the theme of Unforgetting relates to me, just thinking back to family, like knowing that my family came to the United States, like for a better opportunity and like for a better life, but we still have family in Mexico that aren't able to come over or weren't able to get their green card or like whatever that they needed to just come here to also be with us. So I think like always remembering that we still have family over there and that we can still talk to them, like in any opportunity that we get, we should still be able to like connect with them, and like either if it's a FaceTime call, if it's a text, like just let them know that you still know and that you're not forgetting them, you know. But that was just what I think how I'm forgetting.
Like relating to Aleena as a American and Mexican, my parents immigrated here for a better future for her children. I could kind of relate to Lovato's story, where my mom, this one time when my mom told me a story where she and my dad couldn't eat, and I feel like throughout the years Lovato had many situations with like food or not just food but like caring, and because just the amount of traveling he had to do, and my mom immigrated here twice, and I could relate to it because in the book it talks about immigration and how many families travel to this country just to see a better future. And back to Nathan.
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you to all three of you for allowing me to talk in this closed space. Well, now it's going to be public because people are going to know, of course. But this book has really allowed me to tap into my past and understand my future and really see who I'm going to become. And I hope you guys are able to see that one day.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like this book allowed us to open and start conversations that we are, and as a society, aren't having. And it's important that we have these conversations even within us so that we can understand and respect each other.
Like talking about society, this opens up many more knowledge for many of us. Like I didn't even know about this war or like things that go through Salvadorian, but it sounds crazy, and I really appreciate what Roberto did, and I just want to thank him.
So with that being said, thank you for listening to the Unforgetting podcast.